Hello Internet, and today is going to be another wrap up. Once again, I participated in the NEWT readathon. Revolves around Harry Potter, revolves around exam things. Each subject had 3 prompts. There were 12 subjects. I completed all 12 subjects and each prompt that went with each subject. So today we're talking about another subject in which I read books for. That's the basic gist of it. A very confusing basic gist. So today's topic is going to be astronomy. So for the NEWT astronomy, the first prompt to get an acceptable in astronomy was to read a book with stars on the cover. This I read A Closed and Comet Orbit by Becky Chambers. This is a companion / sequel to the first book in the Wayfarer series, which is A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Now this book follows some characters that were introduced in the first book, but does not contain the main characters of the first book. So it's in the same realm. It is more sequel-y than companion-y, simply because you need some of the context that was kind of shown in the first book. However, if you wanted to read this book and not bother with A Long Way to Small Angry Planet, you could understand this book. Although I highly recommend you read both of them in order, because they're both fabulous. A Closed and Comet Orbit basically discusses AI and what makes a person and what makes a person have personhood. Here we talk about Lovelace, who was a character introduced in the very first book, who is an AI system who is meant for ship navigation. Now, because of incidents in the first book, she is now placed in a new body, a human-esque android body, and in this body she is having trouble trying to come to terms with her new life, because as far as she is aware, she is meant to be in a ship and sort of not have her own body. And plus it is really difficult for her to understand her own personhood, because the way that she was created, the way that she has always been perceived, has been of something as such as a tool. So her idea of personhood. We also see another character, Piper, who was introduced in the first book as well. She is the one who's taking care of Lovelace. I can't remember what name Lovelace takes in this book. She ends up naming herself. Oh, I can't remember. We're gonna call her Lovelace for the sake of this right now. She ends up taking in Lovelace, and she has her own past that revolves around AI, specifically how she was born, the type of environment she grew up in, and who was her guardian for a lot of her childhood. So most of this book focuses on AIs and what makes you have your own autonomy and personhood, despite whether or not you were born, whether you're created, whether you're a computer, like the type of personhood. Now, if I'm supposed to compare the two books, I did like this book and I like A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I think they're very different feels to each of them, but I do think that this book was just as good as A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. You just have to be aware this is going to be a different character, different stories, even though it's in the same realm, and it's going to have a lot of similarities because it is in the same universe and has the same like politics and stuff going on. But if you are a fan of AI stories, of that confusing conversation about autonomy and about personhood, whether or not something was born or created and whether or not it should have personhood, I highly suggest this. This is always a conversation I am up for, because I would definitely give AIs personhood. Like, I don't care. If I could get personhood, then I think they deserve it. Doesn't matter whether or not they were created by someone or not. I mean, I think they do. So I like stories like this. The second prompt was for Exceeds Expectations, and it was to read a book that had sky in the cover. Now this one, I wasn't quite sure what book I was going to read, but luckily my hold came in for the audiobook of Stone Sky. This is the last book in the Broken Earth trilogy by M.K. Jemisin. Now I read the first 2 on audiobook, and while I did own the physical copy of the third book, I wanted to finish this trilogy on audiobook. So finally my library bought it, and then finally I got it off of hold, and so I was able to read it. And so of course this is the conclusion. If you're not familiar with this trilogy, I highly suggest you look into it. I will give you the basic bare bones of it. It is a fantasy novel, an adult fantasy that has its own type of science fiction. So it's bordering on that science fiction fantasy line. It takes place in a world where the earth doesn't like the people living on it. They did something to the earth that really made him angry, and really like upset Father Earth. And because of this, Father Earth periodically throughout the years, throughout decades, creates a season. And these seasons are not like normal seasons like spring, fall, winter, all of that. They are seasons of destruction where everything will go out of the natural order of things. Like herbivore animals will start eating meat, crazy things will happen, glass starts falling from the sky, like insane stuff starts happening, and it all revolves around waiting for one of these seasons to come, and that there are a special, race, there's a different race of humans that have a special connection to the earth called origins. They have the ability to kind of like earthbenders, I guess. They have like earthbending powers. I'm not quite sure how to explain their magic. Basically, they're more connected to the earth and they can kind of control natural disasters. So in this third book, a season has come. We're getting the conclusion to the story. I don't know what is my favorite book in the trilogy, but I think what I really like about this third book and what was my favorite part was really seeing the relationship between Essun and Nessun, the mother-daughter. Even though like throughout the book throughout the series they never really get to converse until this very final book in the end, I really like their relationship and how they think of each other. And especially I'm really curious about Nessun and how she thinks of her mother, especially since she's so similar to her mother at the end of the day. Like she is literally her mom. Like look at Nessun in the third book, go back to the first book, tell me that isn't the same person. Like tell me her and her mom aren't basically the same person. Really like this, highly suggest it. If like sci-fi fantasy adult sounds like your thing, I would highly suggest it. It has an interesting way of telling the story because while a lot of the story is in third person, there is a lot of it in second person of one of the characters addressing another character. So I thought that was fascinating as well. You can't really go wrong with this series. It's just strong overall. It's just a good series. And then the last prompt was for outstanding, and this was to read a book that was set in a different world or on a different planet. And for this, I read Lady Castle issue 3. Once again, I've talked about different issues in this throughout all of these other NEWT's wrap-up things. Lady Castle is a comic. It is about a bunch of ladies who end up having to run the whole kingdom because all the men of their kingdom go out on a mission. They all get murked. And now the women are in charge, so they have to figure out how to run a kingdom, how they're going to proceed, what's going to be the new rule of law, and how to protect themselves because the men got the whole kingdom cursed, and now the ladies have to survive all of the creatures that keep coming and attacking them because of the draw of the curse. I did like it. I thought it was good. I thought it could be longer. Like, I guess that was my only real complaint, is that it's fairly short. I would have liked more of it. Other than that, I was perfectly fine with it. And that is it for my Astronomy NEWT. Once again, I'm fantastic. I do so great. Praise to Slytherin, like all the points. If you like what you're seeing here, you want to continue to see more, click all those buttons down below, and goodbye, Internet.